presenter, it's Professor Joe. Professor Joe, more than welcome joining us in our conference. And Professor Mike, I need you to take care about Professor Michael Posler. Michael Posler, it's my PhD advisor. We have now a great relationship, more than 20 years, and your university supporting our conference for a year with several volunteers, chairing sessions and supporting us. Thank you so much, Professor Joe, for a very nice stuff. Go ahead, and the floor for you.
Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you. Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Barlolino. I serve as the president of Stockton University, located in Galloway and Atlantic City in New Jersey, here in the United States. I'd like to talk to you today about navigating the evolving landscape of higher education in the United States. My remarks will cover how this landscape is changing, the current challenges facing higher education, current student perspectives, and preparing for the future. The choice to pursue higher education shapes the minds and futures of tomorrow's leaders and innovators. However, higher education is currently undergoing a period of significant transformation, driven by a convergence of demographic, technological, and economic factors. And at the heart of this transformation lies the issue of declining enrollment. So according to the National Center for Education Statistics, the number of high school graduates in the US is projected to decline by 15% between 2020 and 2030. This demographic shift poses, I think, a formidable challenge for colleges and universities, as it threatens to erode their financial stability and reduce their ability to attract and retain top talent. Compounding this, however, is also the escalating education. Over the past 2 decades, tuition and fees have increased at a rate far exceeding inflation, leaving many students and their families struggling to shoulder the financial burden. As a result, student loan debt has reached staggering levels, surpassing $1.75 trillion in the United States alone. And this growing debt load has far-reaching implications for individuals and society, hindering economic mobility and delaying major life milestones. These challenges, I think, underscore the urgent need to reimagine, if you will, the future of higher education in the US institutions. And so we must adapt to the changing needs of students and the evolving demands of the workforce. They must embrace innovation and technology to enhance the learning experience, while also demonstrating a clear return on investment for students. I think that only through such transformation and transformational measures can higher education remain accessible, relevant, and a driving force for societal progress. As I mentioned, the landscape of higher education is changing, and it's changing rapidly. So the traditional notion of a 4-year degree as the sole path to success are giving way to a more diverse and flexible educational landscape. The traditional model of acquiring all necessary education and skills during one's early 20s is simply no longer sustainable in today's rapidly changing world. The demand for lifelong learning and skills development is skyrocketing as individuals seek to adapt to innovative technologies, emerging industries, and evolving requirements. In fact, According to a recent study by the World Economic Forum, 50% of all employees will need to reskill or upskill by 2025 to keep pace with technological advancements. This highlights the growing importance of higher education institutions in providing opportunities for continuous learning and skills development throughout one's career. And so that leads us to briefly talk about online learning and alternative credentials. As we know, the rise in technology has certainly revolutionized the way education is delivered, making online learning a mainstream option for millions of students worldwide. Online platforms offer flexibility, accessibility, and cost-effectiveness, catering to the broader range of students, including working professionals, individuals with family responsibilities, and those living in remote areas. I would say that in addition to traditional degrees, alternative credentials such as micro-credentials, badging, boot camps, and industry certifications are gaining recognition as valuable indicators of skills and competencies. These credentials offer a more focused and job-specific approach to learning, providing individuals with the skills they need to enter and advance in specific industries. The conversation, in my view, needs to also extend to issues of justice, social justice, and diversity. And so the call for social justice and diversity in higher education is growing louder as institutions grapple with issues of systemic inequalities, underrepresentation, and discrimination. Students, faculty, and staff are demanding a more inclusive and equitable educational environment that reflect the diversity of society. Institutions are responding by implementing initiatives to promote diversity in admissions, hiring, and curriculum development. And they're also creating more inclusive and supportive environments for students from marginalized groups, addressing issues of racial and gender bias, and fostering a culture of respect and belonging. For example, here at Stockton, our Board of Trustees resolved to make us a leader on social justice issues, recommitting our values of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We added courses related to race, racism, and social justice, and have made these required courses for our students. Between the fall of 2021 and the spring of 23, 170 total courses have been taught, with more than 4,600 students completing the requirements. This, in our view, is a testament to our commitment to social justice and diversity, even though it is the tip of the iceberg. I'll also share with you that the challenges, as we know, of higher education are numerous. Despite its transformative power, higher education, I think, faces significant challenges. And these challenges include declining enrollment, rising costs, and the burden of student loan debt, which threaten accessibility and affordability of higher education for many individuals. So let me talk a little bit about declining enrollment. College enrollment, particularly in the United States, has been on a downward trend since 2010, with a total decline of approximately 1.95 million students, or about 10%. And the National Center for Education Statistics further shares with us that this decline has been more pronounced since the COVID-19 pandemic, with a loss of nearly 1.4 million undergraduate students, or almost 9% of total enrollment between spring 2019 and spring 2023. Now, several factors contribute to this decline, including demographic shifts, financial concerns, and the changing perception of the value of a college degree. The traditional college-age population is shrinking, and many young adults are delaying or foregoing college due to the rising costs of education and the availability of alternative career paths. In terms of the rising cost, the cost of higher education has been steadily increasing for decades, outpacing inflation and placing a significant financial burden on students and their families. According to a recent report from the Georgetown University Center on Education and the Workforce, between 1980 and 2020, the average price of tuition, fees, and room and board for an undergraduate degree increased by nearly 170%. This rising cost is a major deterrent for prospective students, especially those from low-income backgrounds. The burden of student loan debt, which stands at a staggering $1.75 trillion, further compounds the financial challenges faced by graduates. And with an average debt of nearly $29,000 per borrower, student loan debt can hinder graduates' financial stability, delaying major life milestones such as home ownership, retirement savings. The high cost of education and the limited availability of financial aid contribute to this growing debt burden. Many graduates struggle to make their monthly loan payments or default on their loans, leading to further financial hardship and damage to their credit scores. The challenges facing higher education demand comprehensive solutions that address the root causes of declining enrollments, rising costs, and student loan debt. Institutions must find ways to reduce these costs, increase financial aid, and supply more affordable options for students. But they must also work to address the equity gaps that prevent many individuals from accessing and completing higher education. By addressing these challenges, higher education can remain a powerful tool for social mobility. Now, as the landscape of higher education continues to evolve, the perspectives of students play a crucial role in shaping its future direction. Students are increasingly questioning the value of higher education, expressing concerns about the high cost of college and the difficulty of finding a job after graduation, and the relevance of curricula to the demands of the modern workforce. A growing number of students are questioning whether the investment in higher education is worth it. In fact, according to Strata Education, 67% of college students believe that the cost of college exceeds its value. This sentiment, of course, is driven by what we've just talked about, rising costs, debt concerns, but in particular, job market uncertainties. I think in an increasingly competitive job market, students are concerned about the return on their investment, questioning whether the college degree will guarantee them a well-paying job. Students are also voicing concern about the relevance of traditional college curricula to the skills and knowledge needed in the modern workforce. They are seeking educational experiences that prepare them for specific careers and provide them with the skills needed to succeed in the digital economy. According to Deloitte, 76% of Gen Z respondents believe that colleges and universities should focus on teaching practical skills and preparing students for specific careers. And so this suggests a shift in student expectations toward applied or vocational education. Of course, most of us wouldn't agree with that. The truth of the matter is that we have found time and time again that employers are looking for students that are grounded in the liberal arts, that have the ability to think critically, to write, communicate, engage in debate and dialogue. I think that at Stockton, as in many other institutions, we continually assess our degree programs and realign them as needed to keep them relevant. We adapt certain programs to make sure we deliver an educational experience that is worthwhile and fruitful. So, for example, Recently, we rolled out a new Bachelor of Science in Esports Management. The faculty in our School of Business built upon the framework of our successful degree in hospitality, tourism, and event management to construct a degree program to set students up for success in the fastest growing industry of esports management. And so I would encourage my colleagues to continue to take a step back in reviewing curriculum and also exploring ways in which we connect both the liberal arts as well as the practical skill sets that provide students with the tools they need to secure employment. Because students are demanding more affordable and accessible options in higher education. And so one of the things that we have seen as a result of COVID is the increased use of a flexible or hybrid learning model that accommodate diverse needs and schedules, as well as alternative credentials and pathways. Pew Research Center found that 75% of adults believe that online learning is as effective or more effective than in-person learning. This highlights the growing acceptance of online education as practical and convenient. But again, I think this depends on the population that you are targeting and the population that you are serving. As the traditional college-age student demographic decreases, the returning adult student and students who want to re-engage, who stopped out, if you will, are looking for more convenient ways to secure their credentials. These perspectives, in my view, are shaping how higher education institutions are looking at their delivery models. They're pushing institutions to address concerns about, again, affordability, relevance, accessibility. So we as institutions need to be willing to adapt. Flexibility is key. I think that in an increasing competitive and evolving market, institutions face a pressing need to adapt to the changing demands of not just students, but employers as well. And so we already know that one size isn't going to fit all. But Ed Venant, who's the managing director with the Student Success Collaborative, has named 3 macro trends in his blog for EAB that closely impact student success and touch nearly every institution in some way. Number 1, the population of traditional age students will continue to diversify and shrink. This will shape the composition of the students that institutions serve while dictating the importance of retention to support enrollment. Number 2 is the confidence in the value of higher education that will continue to decline. Students, parents, and the public increasingly want colleges to show a tangible return on the investment of their time and money. And number 3, the impact of pandemic-era disrupted learning will continue to accelerate. We already see concerning early signals around student mental health and math preparation. So to address these challenges and adapt to the changing needs of students and employers, Mr. Venant recommends post-secondary institutions explore the following 6 key areas. Number 1, new student success challenges, addressing the needs of transfer students, re-engaging stop-outs, recruiting some college and no college students, supporting online and flexible learners, and offering non-degree programs. Number 2, the financial considerations, which we talked about earlier, controlling tuition costs, innovating financial aid options, expanding basic needs support, covering childcare, supplying work schedule flexibility. Number 3, inclusive initiatives, supporting multicultural diversity, recognizing the LGBTQ plus identities, creating an environment for students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, rethinking support for older and working students, and building structures for neurodiverse students. Number 4, mental health support, ensuring adequate counseling resources, promoting belonging initiatives, implementing wellness programs, addressing social development challenges, and encouraging self-education in mental health. And number 5, academic innovations. Again, some of what we talked about earlier, integrating career preparation and civic engagement into curricula, adopting innovative teaching methods, implementing tandem advising models, preparing for increased demand for math tutoring, and expanding credit-bearing supplemental instruction models. And finally, a return on investment, aligning course skills development to workforce needs, embracing career preparation as a primary aim, building connections with employers, communicating institutional strengths to potential employers, and providing the wage leverage of a college degree. In conclusion, as we navigate the evolving landscape of higher education in the United States, we must acknowledge the challenges and trends that shape this ever-changing terrain. The path forward involves adapting to the needs and expectations of students, addressing the rising cost and student debt burden, and embracing innovations that make education more accessible and relevant. The future of higher education is not set in stone. It is a canvas waiting for us to paint on. So I ask us to come together as educators, policy makers, and advocates to ensure that higher education remains a cornerstone of opportunity and a driver for progress in society. Through our collective efforts, we can create a future where the doors to education are open to all, and the promise for our students' success is secured. I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to share some remarks with you. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you for your time.
Professor Mike, can you chairing this session, please?
Yeah, I don't have any questions. I just want to say I want to thank President Joe for taking time. He has an extremely busy schedule. He's doing a whole lot of things. What he gave us was a very thorough explanation of the current state of colleges and college students and what the future is likely to be. And as he says, it's a canvas that has to be painted. Some of the perceptions, as President Joe pointed out, that college students have is they don't think it's a good value, and that, as he said, we're going to have to work on. He also pointed out that what college does, not just teaching a specific skill about how to do something, which is important, but it teaches critical thinking skills. And those critical thinking skills are extremely important in life. The reason is you go through life and you have to make a series of decisions, and where you go depends on the decisions that you make. If you have strong critical thinking skills, you'll be able to gather all the information necessary to make a good decision, and therefore you're likely to make more optimum decisions going forward and be able to progress into the future. So I think his talk was right on point. It's something that in the U.S. and worldwide colleges are experiencing, and he gave a lot of good information about where things are likely to go forward. So personally, I'd like to thank President Joe for taking time out of his busy schedule to offer those kind words.
Professor Bessel, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, President Joe.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Now, I think, Bryan, the next, Professor Mike, Bryan.
Yes. Yeah, we can say it.
Okay. Great. So, and what do I have, like 20 minutes or so to go through this, or is that?
Yes, you have 20 minutes.
About 20 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I come from the practitioner side of things here, although the work that we do is certainly grounded in theory and maybe even more important, empirical validation and evidence. So I run Growth Engine, which is a 25-year-old innovation agency, and our job is to help clients come up with new stuff. Now, typically that's seen as, new products, right? But more and more, we're being asked to lead ideation sessions and do creativity training, not only around new products, but also anytime there's a creative challenge, and that could be in the world of logistics, it could be supply chain, it could be cost cutting, it could be strategy, it could be really anything or any time or anywhere companies need new ideas. And so we, for many years now, we've been promoting this notion of a total innovation enterprise. And I've written about it in several of my books, including Idea Stormers. But we think of this pretty simply, which is, there are two kinds of innovation, innovating for growth and efficiency and process innovation. And of course, innovating for growth, we have, new business models, and you can see some of the things here on the slides. These are all about, growing the top line and increasing profitability, et cetera. And these are the obvious areas for innovation. I think some of the less obvious areas are in efficiency and process innovation. And this could be in every division, every function, every level. And you can see I've listed some of these here. All of those departments, we've done, quote, process innovation work as well. And so I think what's I think fascinating now is that AI, I think, may be a magic key, if you will, to opening up greater acceptance of and success with this notion that we've been promoting for 20 years of this total innovation enterprise. There's been research, a study just came out from Harvard Business School, and it was done with Boston Consulting Group. And it was a massive study. They had also contributors from Wharton, et cetera, and MIT, Sloan. And the study studied over 750 Boston Consulting Group consultants. And what they found, it's a 50-page report. It's called Navigating the Jagged Technological Frontier, Field Experimental Evidence of the Effects of AI on Knowledge, Worker Productivity, and Quality. It sounds like an academic title, which of course it is, but it just came out 6 weeks ago. And really the findings were that, with AI, 12% more tasks were able to be completed, 25% quicker, and the most startling one was 40% higher quality. At the end of this, I can answer questions about this study, but I think the point I want to make here is that one of the findings beneath this data is that it was some of the newer employees, the newer consultants, that had the most dramatic rises in productivity. So I want to get into some real world examples. I need to set this up a little bit and just sort of set up different kinds of ideation. And then I'm going to talk about how AI is affecting our work in this world of ideation. So we've identified 4 categories of ideation processes here. And if you want more information on this, you can contact me, certainly read my books, et cetera. And I'll go through these quickly. But questions is certainly an area of ideation processes. You can see I've listed some of questioning techniques, problem redefinition, et cetera. They're metaphorical or principle transfer techniques. These are the preferred techniques of inventors throughout history. And I'm going to share an example around TRIZ principles here in a second. Visual techniques. These are great for insight work that we do, positioning work. And then finally, fantasy techniques, which gets into some advanced brainstorming. These are just some of the techniques we use for our clients to trigger different parts of the brain and to get different ideas. Okay, so I thought it might be interesting and fun, again, to take something that's not new products, although I'm going to do 2 new product examples in a second because I think they're memorable and fun. But I wanted to take an example in the world of selling, and we've done sessions and programs and initiatives around all these components of selling, and you can see I've listed them here. And again, at the end of this, if anybody has any specific questions on how we've done sales forecasting more creatively or whatever, I'm happy to answer those questions. But what I've done is I've taken real world assignments that we've worked on in the last 20 years, And I said, could AI have helped us with this? Could it have improved the results? Or indeed, could it have come up with the same results, if you will, for lack of a better term? And so this is I think it's an odd and strange and I think fun example. We were contacted by an insurance company in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and believe it or not, they only sell life insurance to Catholics. And I think selling life insurance is one of the most difficult things on the planet, but they only sell to Catholics because it was a fraternal organization, and they've been sued by the Jews and the Muslims and the Buddhists, and their charters held up. So they contacted me. They had read my first book. It was called 99% Inspiration. And they said, can you help us, sell more life insurance to Catholics? And the technique that we used, we did a whole bunch of techniques with them, but this was the one that was breakthrough. It's called problem redefinition. And you can see that I've got an example here. You sort of identify the subject, verb, and object in a sentence, and the subject is we, the verb is sell, and the object is either life insurance or Catholics. And then you come up with alternatives under each one of those, and then you start randomly combining them so you redefine your challenge. So, for instance, how could friends of Catholics incentivize the sale of more life insurance to Catholic school families? And if you have 10 in each column, you have 1,000 different ways to redefine this challenge. So it's an extraordinary way to get people to think more broadly about their challenges. And so we did that, and the net result of this and this work that we did, they increased sales by 52%, which, as anyone knows in this world of business, it's a huge, huge increase. So here's the point. I've now run this on AI, ChatGPT-4, and I said, okay, come up with alternatives for the we's, come up with alternatives for sell, and come up with alternatives for, Catholics. And I'd like you to randomly combine those. And so here's an example of doing just that. There's 7 examples here, but I focused on the second one here. The idea that came out of ChatGPT was proposed that a percentage of the proceeds from each policy sold will go towards supporting the Catholic schools, such as funding for educational materials or scholarships. This may motivate families to purchase policies knowing it supports their children's school. Well, this was one of the breakthrough ideas, for lack of a better term, that came out of our work. And, here it showed up when we had, triggered AI here, right? So I think that's a really good example. Also, selling life insurance to grandparents, blah, 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 blah. But, and I would just say anybody who's in this world of ideation and innovation, if you're worried about being obsoleted, you won't be. I have some thoughts on this. But the point here is that AI allowed us or came up with ideas similar to what we came up with in our actual work with them. So here's another example. We, in the early 90s, I was asked to research for Success Magazine and write an article about TRIZ. Anybody who does not know TRIZ, it's, I won't do it justice here, but Gerald Altshuler hired a whole bunch of team of researchers in Russia in the 50s, and they analyzed 250,000 patents and identified 40 TRIZ principles, or principles of invention, let's call them that. And if you go on AI and just type in TRIZ, it'll show up and you can see those 40 things. So I said, well, let me take a real world challenge and see. Now, TRIZ typically is used for engineering challenges and new products, right? But I said, geez, I wonder if it could work for like a CPG challenge or packaged goods challenge. And so I took one of our assignments. We had, this was for Mondelez, for, Chips Ahoy cookie, right? It used to be Nabisco or whatever, Kraft. And so I said, okay, AI, apply these 40 TRIZ principles to inventing new baked good products or cookies. And so one of the principles you'll see here is the nesting. This is the notion of a doll within a doll within a doll, right? place an object inside of another, place the latter inside of a third object, okay? And so I said, all right, so let's apply that to Chips Ahoy, because obviously we had done the Chips Ahoy work. We had a huge success with them, and I wanted to see if it might repeat that success. And these were some of the ideas that came out of this. And by the way, this is called from hundreds and hundreds of quote, answers or ideas, for lack of a better term, right? Brownie batter blast, a brownie flavored cookie with a smaller cookie inside filled with a chocolate chip center. And you can see these. And I think Dr. Amani will be happy to send you these slides, or I can send you these slides if you want more detail. Anyway, so you can see 6 of these, right? And again, these were called from hundreds. Well, what happened in the real world? This is what happened in the real world. We had the notion of putting a brownie inside of a chocolate chip cookie, which we just saw, right? And once we figured that out, once with the R&D scientists were able to do that, and the manufacturing people, then you could say, well, what else could you put in there? And these are some of the real world products that came out of this project we did. But of course, again, all of this was in some ways anticipated or fed back to us through the AI experiment that I recently ran. Okay, and again, these are all real world products, and the brownie field one is just gangbusters, and it tastes really good, by the way. Okay, so I thought, well, let me just focus on some fantasy techniques here, and I wanted to challenge AI and say, could it do fantasy things? And one of the techniques we use is worst idea, and you come up with bad ideas, and then you try to turn those bad ideas into good ideas, either by doing the opposite or saying, as bad as this idea is, can we come up with a new idea? And I was surprised that AI did not react to that. When I said, come up with bad ideas for something, it was right with me. You know, I thought it might edit it out, but no, it came up with bad ideas. To be politically correct here, though, I picked silly idea, and you know, against a sustainability initiative. And you can see that the prompt, the silly prompt, is the first one. Employ mermaids to clean water systems. That's a silly idea. But then what's the idea that could come out of that? Implement natural water filtration systems like living green walls, right? And wetlands. Or if you go to the last one, this is incredibly silly, right? And again, the prompts themselves were generated by AI, the silliness and the ideas. So from that, use rubber ducks to create a floating solar panel system. The idea to develop floating solar panels shaped like rubber duckies. Obviously, you wouldn't shape them like rubber duckies, but that generate renewable energy while adding a playful touch to water bodies. I mean, you know, floating solar panels is actually an interesting idea, right? Okay, so I got one last one I want to share here. I've gone through this quickly, but I want to give the audience time and maybe say some other things before we open up for question. We had done a project for a snack food company, one of the large ones in the U.S. It was not Mondelez, I can say that. It was a different company. And so this was sort of in earlier this year. And so I went into that ideation session, and this was a 2-day ideation session. So that's a tremendous amount of time. Normally we just would do a day, but that was 2 days. And so I did a bunch of exercises where I used AI triggers. Now, it's important for people to know that, you know, the difference between brainstorming and ideation is that in brainstorming, you say, got any ideas, got any more ideas, right? And you withhold judgment. In ideation, it's all about what triggers you can use to trigger the brain to come up with new ideas. And again, those could be visual triggers, fantasy triggers, metaphorical triggers, etc., questioning triggers. So I did this. I went into this session, and one of the exercises I had actually I went into that session with over 1,000 snack food ideas, all of which had been generated by AI. And I said, you know, pick some interesting ones here, and let's evolve them and make them better. and I think the prompt was something like, healthier on-the-go snack, let's say. And so I went into that session with 1,000 things, and it was fantastic. It was great stimuli, right? When I got back from that session, I said, gosh, I wonder how far I could push AI in terms of the criteria that we might use, or the guardrails we might use, to create a new product, a new snack. And so I, intentionally went over the top, right? I intentionally pushed it, so far. And so here's the prompt, and this is called prompt stacking for those who are interested. So create 5 new plant-based, that's a criteria, healthier, handheld, baked, on-the-go, breakfast, snacks for kids to compete with Pop-Tarts inspired by French cuisine. So how many criteria do you have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are 10 criteria there, all the things in red. And I thought, wow, this AI is going to blow up. But no, this is what came out of that, for instance. And if you look at the second one, and by the way, all these ideas are not good, but if you look at that second one, nutty croissant roll-ups, taking inspiration from the classic French croissant. These roll-ups are made with flaky whole grain pastry filled with plant-based nut butter and a touch of fruit jam, rolled in a convenient handheld shape. They're perfect for on-the-go breakfast. My gosh. I mean, that, and by the way, as you know, this showed up in literally seconds, these alternatives. I mean, that's an incredible synthesis of these 10 different criteria. So one of the takeaways for the listeners here in the audience is specificity when you do the prompting is fantastic. And you might doubt that it would work, but try to be more and more and more specific. And in my experience, you'll get more and better results, frankly, just like this. All right. Okay. So here are just some free resources, articles we've written. I have a TEDx talk. You can see the link up there. These are all facets or components of, ideation and innovation process. These are some of my books. The one, Islands of Invention, which is a book on creating extraordinary innovation centers, I've co-written with a McKinsey guy. That'll come out at the beginning of next year. But all of these have ideation and innovation process in them. And the thought here is that you can use dozens and dozens and dozens of techniques in AI to, at the end of the day, trigger your team to come up with workable ideas. Last week I was with a healthcare company in Dallas, a device company, and I went in and we had, and this was training, so we did action learning. We worked on the real world challenges, but the point was to transfer process. But the whole notion here is that we used AI we used AI to create stimuli that would trigger new ideas. Okay, and the point here is that it's not necessarily going to give you answers, AI, but it's incredible tool in ideation and innovation work and problem solving work to trigger you to get new ideas. And so you need both. You need the AI and you need the humans. And then finally, I just put in here that these are 2 AI-assisted books that I've recently written, and some of you might be interested in those. So I think I did 20 minutes here. I think that's pretty close. I wanted to make sure I'm going to stop sharing here. I wanted to make sure we had time for questions because this was a bit of a fire hose, and I went through this quickly. But particularly if there's something about working with teams that are not innovation-oriented teams, that in any division or department or any industry, if there are any questions about creating a total innovation enterprise, I'm happy to answer those now.
I'm not sure about some of the questions that we're getting here, Bryan, but I just want to make one point on something that you said that I think is very profound. We should use AI to stimulate new ideas. I think
Yes.
people are looking at AI as doing things for them, but use it to stimulate new ideas, I think is very profound.
Well, thank you, Michael. The research, I think it's a seminal study that Harvard Business School did with Boston Consulting Group. What they discovered was that for earlier employees of their consultants, AI was particularly helpful, but it was frankly less helpful for more experienced consultants. And what that implies, in my opinion, is again, you need both. The AI is going to help. It's a tool, but you should never, in my opinion, look at it as, quote, the answer. And this is and they had an interesting metaphor. They talked about a cyborg versus a centaur in this study. And the cyborg, of course, is you're linked at the hip here, and you're sort of coexisting in a sort of unnatural way, right? But with the centaur, the notion is you've got to kind of be partners in this process, and that's a key point here. And so we're not obsoleted. And you have to bring different processes. Number one, which is what we do, you have to train people in those processes so everybody can use them. But at the end of the day, you also have to be very rigorous about your own experience and making sure that you're, using your experience to make these ideas better than they would be just by themselves.
Excellent point. Thanks so much. Hanani, we have one more paper in this session.
Yes, please. James Garner from Leeds.
Hi, Dr. Nadi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. I've been listening to the presentations, really great stuff, Michael and Bryan, and enjoyed your presentations a lot. Have I got about 20 minutes, Nadi?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to be covering probably a few similar themes, but I'm going to be looking at it mainly from the perspective of project delivery. So I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully we get this to work. Bear with me 1 minute. So is that all displaying okay, everybody?
Yes.
Good.
Yes,
Good.
we can see that. Good.
Okay, so what I'm going to be looking at, so when I talk about project delivery, I'm talking about mainly construction and infrastructure projects or nuclear projects, anything that requires, a large program of works effectively. And I work for a company called Gleeds. We're a global company, and we specialize in project management, cost management, quantity surveying, and various other construction advisory roles. And one of the things around construction and project delivery is that it's quite immature in the way that it's embraced technology, or at least it has been. And what's quite exciting about a lot of the technology that's coming out, particularly generative AI, is for the first time you can start seeing how we're going to be able to change the trajectory of project delivery and sort of overcome some of the pitfalls. But so before I come into where I think generative AI and everything is going to have a huge impact, I want to talk about project delivery and why it's particularly difficult to master. So there's this kind of concept around every project being unique, right? So whether you build a school or a hospital or a nuclear power station, every single one you can argue is unique in some way, because even if you've got the same basic build, it'll be on different foundations. You'll have different kind of searches around those areas that will have an impact. So there's this kind of thought process, which is, well, every project's unique, so you can't kind of productionize what you do in construction or infrastructure. But I don't think that's true. And I think whereas in the past it has been very hard to sort of learn lessons from past projects, I think now with the increase in compute power, the increase in AI, the increase in technology, we can start utilizing data from this project to give us better outcomes. And what I like to sort of compare it to is football, right? So you could say the same thing about football. Every game is unique. But that's not necessarily true. You know, it's made up of constituent parts. And recently in football, they've started introducing this concept of XG, which is stands for expected goals, and it's effectively like a chance meter. It tells you how likely a shot is to become a goal, and it's a number between 0 and 1. And they calculate it using things like distance to goal and angles, and a higher XG means it's a better chance to score. Now, that just wasn't possible to calculate before, and before we started having data analysts in football matches. And now every single game is analysed within an inch of its life, and you can start looking at XG numbers. I mean, at the end of the day, yes, it all comes down to how many goals you score, but it's still a very good barometer. And football, you know, actually that's happened for quite a while in other sports like baseball, and there's some excellent literature and films around this phenomenon in data analytics in sport. Moneyball is a great Hollywood film that I would thoroughly recommend about how using data analytics totally changed the trajectory of that particular game. And Expected Goals is a book by Rory Smith that talks around how that's being done in football now. So again, you know, we could say that every single game is unique, but you know, there are different ways of doing it. And the other thing I wanted to quickly look at was other industries and what's happening in other industries. So if you take the music industry, for example, that's going through a huge shake-up at the moment with the introduction of generative AI and causing quite a lot of legal kind of discussions around what is right and what is wrong. And I'm just going to play an example of an AI generated Liam Gallagher from the band Oasis, and hopefully the sound will come through.
I don't belong in this place where I was born, but I was hoping that you'd come and set me free.
So I just wanted to play a little snippet, and for anyone who knows Oasis's music, you'll know that sounds incredibly like Liam Gallagher, and that is all AI generated. And funny enough, he actually popped up on Twitter, or whether it's called now, to say, "Wow, I sound mega." But there are other artists who are taking a different approach and sort of saying, "I'm going to sue you." And on the other side of the fence, you've got other artists actually saying, "Well, there's a way to monetize this. There's a way that I can let people use an AI generated version of my voice, and as long as I get 50% of the revenue, right?" So there's these really innovative models coming out about how can we use AI. And some people are taking a very conservative approach, which is we're not going to do it. We're not going to use it because I don't understand it. And other people are sensing the opportunity. And I'm going to skip over this one because it's a similar story. But the recent kind of Beatles single that came out using AI to separate vocal stems that was, you know, up until even last year was thought to be an impossibility, shows just how quickly the technology in the music field is changing, and it's transforming the music industry and creating brand new opportunities for the music industry. If you look at Amazon, you know, there's another example there. Everyone thinks of Amazon as, you know, where you go and get your online shopping, but it actually started life as an online bookstore, and actually it's one of the world's biggest web service providers. And when you think about it, Amazon is a data company, right? And they basically sell you back the data that they derive from you. So you could say every customer is unique, but if they've got your data, you know, they can start seeing trends. And you know, we're even looking into sort of the automotive industry, like Volkswagen. You know, they're turning into, with the advent of self-driving cars, also into a data company. The data that they're going to generate from the trips and what's happening in the self-driving industry will enable them to sell other things to their customers. And you know, even Rent-A-Kill, you even got IoT mouse traps that can tell you, you know, what's happening with your pest control. So it's everywhere, and every industry is trying to work out how technology, and particularly generative AI, is going to help them. So going back to my question, is every project really unique? So if I go back and talk about what happens on a big construction project or big infrastructure project, actually, you do the same things. You do business cases, feasibility. You have to procure a contractor. You have to report on progress. You have to cost manage it. You have to look at the change control, and you have to deal with disputes. So whilst every project's unique, the actual processes you go through, are quite predictable. So this brought me to this study that I find absolutely illuminating from Oxford University, Said Business School at Oxford University. Looked at a data set of about 18,000 projects. And what was incredible was from that, only 47.5% of projects are finished on time, on budget or better. And then it gets worse because only 7.8% finished on time and on budget, which is woeful. But then only 0.5% of projects, and this can be anything from delivering the Olympics to a little, school extension, only 0.5 finish on budget, on time, and to the benefits that were outlined in the original business case, i.e. what you thought you were buying. That's 1 in 200 projects. So this is the kind of bar that we've got to try and change, and why I'm so excited about the future. Because if you look at construction, this graph's from the UK, but I've looked at similar metrics elsewhere. If you look at productivity generally in the economy, the yellow line shows this general increase in productivity, which you'd expect, right? As time goes on, everyone's trying to get more productive. The other lines are all construction or civil engineering related activities. And it's again showing that between 1997 and 2020, we actually got worse. And there's actually less skilled workers in the industry to deliver all these projects. So you can see that gap is widening. And to me, the way that we sort of close that gap is through technology. And it kind of raised the question, like some medical doctors are using DNA and other things to sort of say, are certain people predisposed to illnesses? Well, actually, we can use data now to derive whether certain projects are predisposed to failure. So I wanted to spend the first half of this presentation looking at the problem, because it's really important to understand what the problem is we're trying to solve. And we're living in this exponential age now where things are moving so fast. You can see there, it took 3.5 years for Netflix to get to 1 million users, and it took ChatGPT 5 days. So the rate of adoption is so fast now that it means that things can change. I think actually the 1 million users for the telephone was 75 years or something I saw this morning. So, you can see how that exponential trend means that, things have to move faster. So Gen AI or generative AI, the opportunity, I think, for the project delivery profession. And a lot of you will know this quote from the CEO of Alphabet, the Google parent company. Artificial intelligence will have a more profound impact on humanity than fire, electricity, and the internet. It's a pretty profound statement. And, only time will tell if that's true. But what we can say for sure is that, it has certainly been the buzzword of 2023 and no sign of it reducing 2024. And this actually goes back a long, long way. And if we look at the Russian economist Mikhail Kondratyev, I believe is how you pronounce his name, he had this notion of these waves of innovation. The first back 1780, 1830, the steam power. Then we came to steel and rail, then electricity, then oil and gas. And we're just coming out of the silicon chip kind of wave. So I guess the question is, are we approaching a new wave? Is this a new spring, a generative AI spring, and that kind of sixth wave? And I think there's a very real chance that if we embrace, and there are caveats to that, we have to embrace it properly, responsibly, with all the kind of concerns that the other speakers were talking about, but that this really could be the next wave of innovation. And somebody earlier was talking about, adoption and culture being such an important topic. And I think that's true. And this graph, I actually pinched this from a presentation I was at this morning, and it really hit home to me that actually things happen in two waves. There's the technological advancement, which happens, and then you kind of got to reduce your expectations because you go into that next cycle, which is around here. You know, you kind of get to the technology, you get all excited about where things are, which is probably where we are at this peak with generative AI. Then you've actually got to lower your expectations because you've got to go through this next wave, which is all about adoption and training and culture, which is such an important point of what we're trying to do. So, you know, what is generative AI? I think most people kind of got a good idea, but it can be anything that generates something, right? So, you know, we all know about ChatGPT, so chatbots, but it can be your image creation, the DALL-Es and your Midjourneys, which are getting ever more powerful. And music. I mean, there's something called Music LM, which is a Google product where you can use text-based prompts to create really good pieces of music. So every industry is being affected. And then, you know, there's some examples here where generative AI has been baked into existing products. You know, the Photoshop has now got a generative AI built into it. You've got Autodesk. And then obviously a lot of people will know about Copilot, which is coming within the Microsoft Office environment. And then I'm not going to go through the videos now from a sense of time. But I'm happy to provide the links to them all because they're all really fascinating. And within my industry, architecture and engineering, you know, there is a lot of good examples of startups who are getting some real investment from some of the big players, actually. I know, for instance, there's Google have invested in a company called Nplan. I know you've got a speaker later, a guy called Greg Norton from Nodes and Link, who has got some fantastic backing on how to generate generative AI to basically take some of the grunt work out of project delivery. So I think I covered that about getting to that many users. Just some examples of where we're using this tech. There's a company called BuildDots, and they've got an incredible product that allows you to go around site with effectively a scanner. It's more than just a camera. It's got LiDAR, it's got all various kinds of data points that it's picking up, and it can use machine learning to basically report back on progress on site. And beautifully for our client who may have projects all over the world, they can immerse themselves in their project from anywhere in the world. So what a huge change that is. I mentioned Nplan. Nplan looks at schedules, project schedules, and is using AI to be able to generate both generate and also critique schedules using their huge database of schedules that they built up. And this is just an example. A lot of people may have been playing with the new feature from ChatGPT that came out just last week, the ability to create your own ChatGPTs. And just in the last week, I've come across, you know, these ones, a Primavera Pro guide, which is basically the piece of software you use to create programs, a Project Manager Pro, a Cost Estimator Pro. One of those I actually developed myself, and it's so easy to generate these things. And it's really, you know, I have to admit, I'm a proponent of this stuff, and I thought this stuff was probably another couple of years away. And then what keeps astounding me is OpenAI, Google, Bard, Anthropic, they keep releasing features faster than I've got time to digest what they've just released. But I think the danger of this is there's going to be this gap emerge between the people, the evangelists, people who want to do it, and the people who are so overwhelmed with the amount out there that they just kind of, you know, almost wash their hands of it a little bit. And so we've got to be a bit careful about that, I would say. That's one kind of fear. Going back to project delivery, though, I think, you know, in the UK, we've got a lot of government backing about using project data analytics and AI. There's a lady called Jo Jolly, who's head of project futures at the Infrastructure and Projects Authority at the heart of government. And she's built it into something called the Transforming Project Delivery document, the TIP document that she's produced, but basically says that, you know, all projects should be using project data analytics and AI to improve project performance. So there's a real push in the UK behind it. And I know there's some similar initiatives elsewhere in the world. So it's exciting time. You know, some of the chartered professions, so the APM, which is the Association of Project Managers in the UK, they've released a number of guides around how you get started on project data, how you can develop your project data analytics skills. And I've had the pleasure of being part of this. And again, I'll put some of the links to these things in the chat afterwards. And what this all basically means, right, is, again, some of you may be familiar with this graph, the Gartner optimization, or the value escalator, is it's going to drive our industry, project delivery, from that bottom left-hand corner of doing lots of hindsight, lots of looking back at what went wrong, whose fault it was, into meeting up and using AI to do some prescriptive analytics, actually sort of describing what you should do, giving you options so that you're spending time wisely and you're increasing value to your clients. That's what I'm hopeful for, and we've got to move ourselves up that chain. And that's where I think the impact of generative AI can really help. And there's other things going on as well, like there's the visions for 2025. I've recently taken over the chairmanship of the Project Data Analytics Task Force, and we're producing these visions. Where do we want our profession to be in the next few years? And 2025 doesn't sound like a long time away, but you can see from how quickly things like ChatGPT are releasing new features. Things are happening very quickly now. So we're looking at how do we reimagine project management? How do we reimagine risk management? How do we reimagine quantity surveying? And before I finish, I just wanted to go back to a few people have mentioned this, and it's worth underlining because it's crucial to all of it, is about upskilling people's data literacy, because no longer is it a case that data literacy is for the data geeks or for the data team. Every person needs to improve their data literacy. And in Gleeds, we've put a huge program together of allowing people to anything from dipping their toe in the water with lunch and learns all the way up to sort of master level degrees. And we're very lucky in the UK, we get that funded by the government with something called the apprenticeship levy. But we do offer this worldwide. We call it our upskill program. And it can be anything from as basic as improving your basic Excel skills all the way through to, learning how to code in Python and, learning how to use the Microsoft Power Stack, things like that. I did have a short video to show some of our things that we're working on, but I'm very conscious that I'm probably past my 20 minutes. So I'll leave that there. And what I'll do is I'll post some of the links that I talked about today on the chat afterwards, so you can look at it in your own time. But I'm very conscious that you've got a very packed agenda, so I don't want to take any more of your time up. So if anyone has got any questions, more than happy to answer them.
Okay, looks like we're done. Thanks so much, James. That was very informative. There was one word you said there that I think is very key, and it's the word fear. Because every time some of these innovations come out, people are very fearful. I remember back in the 80s when the personal computer was just revolutionizing things. People said, oh, I'm going to lose my job. What am I going to do? So you have to get over the fear. And I think people have to see that these new tools will increase individuals' productivity. So they'll be able to do more. So it's not something that's going to do away with jobs, although some jobs will disappear, but it's a tool people can use to increase productivity. So it's I think that fear factor ends up being something that'll have to be addressed.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And that's nothing new. Every time you mention the personal computer, but you could probably go back further than that. There's always innovation, and it's the people who embrace it and use it to improve their productivity that prosper. And I think the way we're trying to deal with it, Michael, is with the upskilling program, it's telling people that it's nothing to be fearful of, because a lot of people think, well, I'm so far down that scale, I may as well give up hope. And it's to give that message, no, actually, this is for everyone. The entry point now is really easy. You don't need to be a master programmer. You can get into this really quickly. And a lot of people who've gone off through our upskill program have gone back saying, oh my God, I thought I was a Luddite. And now I'm doing stuff I couldn't believe I was doing. And I'm doing tasks in, 10 minutes that used to take me a day to do. And that's why I'm so passionate about this, because it does change people's lives.
Yes, it is. Thanks so much, James. It's an excellent paper and a very thoughtful presentation. I'm going to turn everything over to my dear friend, Naz Oneal, who will take over for me.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, James. Great presentation. As always, I enjoy these sessions and learning a great deal in the